Hey there, my name is Brighton. Welcome back to another midweek. Grateful to be here with you all. Recovering from laryngitis, so please excuse as my voice is a little in the basement, but I am glad to have Pastor Aaron back here.
Hey Brighton, I'll just talk enough for both of us.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I was like, if I ask good enough questions, then Aaron will just talk the whole way through. So anyway, you just gave this past Sunday's message focusing on Israel, Exodus 19 and 20. God begins his relentless rescue. And you focused on 3 E words to kind of guide us through the story of Israel: election, Exodus, and exile. And one of the ones that I kind of want to focus on the second one, the Exodus. And one of the things that I noticed was that God rescued and began that Exodus for the people of Israel before he gave them the law of the 10 Commandments. I find that very fascinating. Maybe you do too. What is the significance there of that order?
Yeah. Let's start with the complexity of the law. Because as we know, it's not just the 10 Commandments, it flows from there. And when you look at the biblical story, Exodus 19 all the way to the end of Leviticus, which is lots of rules, that's really all one part. And what God is doing is he's giving them the law, he's giving them the way that they should live in the land. Now you kind of go back in the story and you're like, well, the first man and woman didn't live in the land properly. They didn't live in the land of Eden well. And so the complex law, in a way, is to meet the complexity of sin when God is going to put them back into a good land. And so while he's moving them back in, he's prepping them. He's getting them ready to say, listen, I'm giving you this gift of land. I'm putting you back into it. It's going to flow with milk and honey. It can sustain animals. It can sustain crops. Listen, so that you get it right, let me give you some guidance, right? God is not standing far off. He doesn't say like, hey, go and figure it out and then learn your way. He's like, no, I'm going to give this to you to guide you. In a way, it's helping them to see how do we get back into Eden? How do we make this place garden-like in a way that's full of righteousness and justice and good living? And of course, it's not just how they do agriculture, although it is that. It's, well, how do we live together? How do we treat one another? And because there's complexity in sin and people are going to come through their land, well, how do we treat them too? How do we treat people who visit through and are traveling through our land? How do we live in our relationships with each other and with foreigners as well? So the law is that really great gift to say, here's how you can be successful with this great gift I'm giving to you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then with the focus of Israel, it does take place in the Old Testament, and there are some people that may have the tendency to believe, okay, well, why do we need to focus on Israel or the story of Israel or the Old Testament when we have Jesus in the New Testament? So what is that importance for us today as believers of the story and the history of Israel?
So the best way to reflect on the value and importance and necessity of the Old Testament is just to read the very first chapter of the New Testament, which is going to start you into, this is a continuation of the story of Israel, right? Jesus is not some fellow from outside any tribe or tongue or race. No, he is a Jew. He's circumcised. He speaks he speaks Aramaic. He speaks the language of the Jewish people in their location. He's very much embedded in a time and place and flows as part of the story. He's the pinnacle of it. He's what all of it is pointing to. He's what the whole story of the Old Testament is pointing to. He's the full anticipation of it. But it's all one story, and Jesus is just a continuation in it. So whenever we talk about Jesus the Christ or the Messiah, he's the Messiah of Israel. Not just Israel, but through his own story, through his people of the whole world. When we say Jesus is the Christ, we say he's the king. Not just the king of the Jews, although he is the king of the Jews, but the king of the whole world. It's a thoroughly Jewish story. Whenever we cut off half the story, or 2/3 of the story really, whenever we cut that part off, how would we ever expect to think that we're going to understand Jesus? How do we think we're going to understand? But so many times we think like, oh, the Old Testament is bad news. The Old Testament is to be done away with. It's not relevant. When the truth is, we have to read it as continuing good news. And we have to become relevant to it to see like, okay, different time, different culture, but how do I see myself in it? And how do I apply it to my life? And here's the really good news as well. Just like God gave the law, and said, here's how you can live wisely and well. This is how you can live in accordance with my will.
Mm-hmm.
As the story continues, we have the Holy Spirit. God gives the Holy Spirit to teach us, to train us, to give us eyes to see, to read his story well, and to apply it well. Just as God was giving the law, God gives the Holy Spirit so that we can follow his way, work, and will in our world.
Yeah. One of the things when you were going through your message was God had a plan. He implemented that plan. And then there was famine, or there was failure or lack of faithfulness. How does that show God's character even today for us?
Yeah. So think back to the first part of this series was on the Creator.
Mm-hmm.
And we said that God created humankind. He gave them a role. He entrusted them with a mission. They were meaningful agents. What they would do mattered.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever they sinned and moved against God, you didn't see God reaching down and snapping his fingers and saying, all right, gang, do overtime. We got, right?
Yeah.
Don't worry. No, their actions really mattered.
Mm-hmm.
Their agency was real and true.
Mm-hmm.
It's important for us to see that our agency matters as well. So when God starts to reach into the world and start to make things right, he's not undoing at the snap of his fingers as though putting things back in place. He's actually engaging in the story.
Mm-hmm.
So the land, which was going to yield food, but also with anxiety and stress and strain and toil and with thorns and thistles, the land still suffers. God gives land and he says it'll work, but it still suffers. When God gives the law for faithfulness, the people are still faithless. They're still failures. So it just shows like, oh, the ongoing action matters, right? The agency of the people from the very start still mattered. And our agency today still matters. God doesn't just snap his fingers and say, all right, I'm going to take away all the things you did wrong.
Right.
God says, I'm going to come alongside you and empower you, and I'm going to start to make things right, but often through you in a way that you could not do on your own.
Yeah.
But yeah, your agency matters, and it mattered to turn things for wrong, but I'm going to turn you so that your agency, your choices, your work and will, because it's me and you working and willing, can also be used to bring about good. So there's a way that it says God is still taking seriously that he's created a world that has meaningful activity and meaningful agency.
That's good. Going back to the 3 E's that we've been talking about, the election, Exodus, exile. And one of the things that I noticed is that it first starts focused on one person, and then it goes to a nation, and then it goes out to the whole world. And how else do we see that person, nation, world paralleled throughout the Bible?
Yeah, clearly, most clearly in Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So we say that God's election is God's determined choice, right? He selects one through whom he will start to bring good. Of course, that's Abraham. And then it expands to the people of Israel. You will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, right? So that the whole world can be engaged in worship of the true God. And the selection of the whole world echoes back to God saying to the first man and woman, be fruitful and multiply, right? Stretch out, increase in number, move into the world, subdue it, turn it into Eden, right? What you see here, turn the rest of the world into this kind of beautiful place. And then we'll all be directing its glory and worship to God. That's God's whole point from the start. And when God picks Abraham to make a nation of Israel, when he picks the nation of Israel to reach the whole world, God is yet reaffirming his choice that the whole world will be directed in worship to him. Of course, that story still has breakdown, right? There's too much of the world in the Jewish people. And so you have the story of Jesus, right? The Son of God taking on flesh, coming into our world, but yet through human means, through the Virgin Mary. He comes into our world, reaffirming his choice of the people of Israel, right? He's the Jewish Messiah. And through that, reaffirming his choice of the whole world. For God so loved the world that he gave his Son, that through Christ, we will yet see the whole world oriented back in worship to God. That's the heart of God, to see the whole world oriented back in worship to him. Now, the small sign of God doing that work, of course, is the church, which is the Jewish people and the Gentiles coming together in one body under the reign of Jesus Christ. I start to think of, I like to think about it like this. If God can take me and orient my life in worship, then why would I think he couldn't orient the whole world? Because I know where I would be without his grace. If God can do that for me, then I have no reason to doubt that God can be active in any person's life who will just be submitted to the work and reign of Jesus Christ.
So good. And you ended with exile. The nation of Israel is in exile, but kind of like you said, the story's not done. That's not the end. But we are also, you said, we are all living in exile today. So what's the next step after that? After exile, how do we come back? Or where are we to go?
Yeah, so maybe we think about it in terms of Luke 15 and the prodigal son. Like, we all start in exile. We all start in a kind of alienation from one another. Like, the fact that each of us was born brought great pain and strain to our mothers is a sign of sin. As God says, I will increase your pain in childbearing. So that's what I mean when we all start in exile, we all start in a kind of alienation from God in our own minds, from one another, from ourselves as we get older and want to hide and cover and kind of put on a face as we're forming a self internally. We all start in exile, and we all need to be brought home. We all start in the place of the prodigal son who's far away, or in the place of the older brother who's close and yet his heart is far away, right? We're in one of those two spots. And God's heart, the Father's heart, is always to bring us in, right? To woo us back, to draw us back in. So that's what I mean when I say we're in exile. Now, thanks be to God, we can be part of God's family. We can be brought in because of what Christ has done. He has come to us and invites us back into his family, into his very body, which we call the church. And we can know what it's like to be in a relationship with him. We can know what it's like to be in faithful relationship with God, to know God's love for us, that it sustains us, that God's love persists even whenever we fall and stumble and we choose to reject, we choose to be strained in our relationship with God. God is yet faithful, wooing, drawing, ministering, convicting, inviting us back in.
All right. Thanks so much for breaking all that down and sharing that with us. Hopefully you got great insight from that. And like we said, the story doesn't end here with Israel. Thanks be to God. And there is more. There's more to God's story. There's more to our story. So hopefully you have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.
See you later.